food trucks in this city are great. There's tons of variety. These are all hard-working small businesses.
There's just so many great places like little hole-in-the-walls restaurants or on the Eastern Prom, being able to come and have all the food trucks.
The community is strong. We look out for each other, we help each other, we're supportive of each other's efforts, we try and collaborate.
We're absolutely part of the foodie culture in this town, and I mean, without us, I mean, it takes away a lot.
We want people just to be able to come out, have a nice time, and get good food. It's working so far.
Yeah, we get a lot of families who bring their kids out. They make a day of it. They'll come get food at the food trucks, go over to the playground.
The Eastern Prom as well very quickly became the spot for the weekends. People lounging in the park, eating, kind of drinking, hanging out.
The food truck we're new to the town as far as the business goes. We're getting our foot in the door. We want to test the water, see what really responded with people. So the food trucks has really been encouraging as far as that goes. And we wanted the lowest cost operation that we could run with 3 people.
And I think, we operated for 3 years of the food truck before we thought of building a restaurant. And it took 3 years to, pay for the truck and kind of get ourselves a little set up.
I just couldn't see myself ever affording a brick and mortar. At the time I was working for farms and just not getting paid very much, which is kind of what I did for most of my 20s. Anything like a brick and mortar or getting my own farm just seemed completely impossible, but something like a food truck seemed a little bit more within reach financially for me.
The public market was kind of a place to prepare all the food that we're using on the food trucks. It's a good place, it's low rent, it's not a huge commitment because the spaces are very small, so the cost to build out the space is a lot less than, say a large restaurant. Had a lottery, took all the 14 trucks that applied for the Cutter Street lot, and they put them on a pinwheel, like a digital pinwheel, and we were all watching live from Zoom, and every time a truck got selected, the pinwheel had less trucks, and then at the end there was 4 left, and we were one of them, so we didn't get picked, and that meant that we weren't allowed to park in the Cutter Street lot, or here for that matter. So
The lottery itself was a bit surrealistic. It was suddenly there's your name on a revolving color chart spinning, and slowly everybody's getting their name knocked off and yours still remains, and in the end you're still on the wheel. So Mr. Tuna and I and 2 others, I believe, were without permits at that time.
But yes, there was a colorful lottery wheel that looked very Wheel of Fortune-esque. It had a bunch of trucks' names on it, and they pressed a button and it spun around, and it was kind of like maybe one of the most terrifying moments of my life. Like, up there with like near-death experiences, like, am I going to lose my business? I've put years, this is second-generation family business. I haven't put just years, I've put my life into this.
Immediately after the lottery, we began talking, Jordan and Mr. Tuna and myself and the brothers at Falafel Mafia about putting a protest together, and then it branched out and people were just kind of popping messages back and forth. So we, by all means, were dedicated to participating in that.
The city has, used as their reasoning for moving us down there is the public comment at that city council meeting.
Hi, I'm Mitch, and I live on the 210 Eastern Prom. I would like to say that one of my biggest peeves, and I love having the food trucks, they need a dedicated food truck park, and that needs to not be on the Eastern Prom. The Eastern Prom is a residential area with a public park, yet commercial businesses are being allowed to run here without paying the kind of property tax or rents that a Waterview commercial business would normally have to pay. Add that to the ungodly noise pollution that comes from those gas generators. And imagine you're paying the kind of rent or property tax that a Waterview comes with, but you can't use your front porch to have a conversation because no one can hear you. You can't leave your windows open during the summer because the noise is just unimaginable. You can't even sit in your house and watch your own TV because of all the noise coming from the gas generators. And your view got taken away by all these ugly trucks sitting in front of you.
Public comment. So we almost had 2 hours of public comment at that meeting. Folks were just blasting through it. They were just so livid that we were considering this because it was obstructing views from their homes. It was, and everyone would start by saying, well, I'm a foodie. I love food, but I don't want these near my house.
Which was really, I'd say
A handful of neighbors.
10 or 15 people commenting, definitely not the pulse of the city of Portland and the residents.
It's also, what it comes down to is this is a public park. That's really it. We pay the city every year. We pay the state every year. We stay in the spots we're supposed to be.
And the city council had agreed to keep food trucks up here. Last minute, the city manager overturned that. So it was kind of a decision left up to one person, which didn't really seem fair. There was no vote on it or no discussion with any of the small business owners, any of the food trucks. So yeah, it caught us really off guard.
No one should ever decide how our parks and how our city is going to look based on their opinion solely. And I feel the same way about the city manager's decision. Because they didn't mitigate trash, they didn't mitigate pollution, they just moved the problems away from the people who didn't want to look at them. It tells me that the trash and the pollution were not the problems. The problems were the image of the food trucks. And that's really sad for me. If the problems had been trash and pollution, they would have done something really fast to mitigate those, but they didn't. All they did was move us. And I think that speaks volumes. They moved us out of the sight of those very nice porches that we only ever get to see, never go on. And they pushed us down into the lower lot so that the park goers have to look at the food trucks now if those are bad. But the park goers also have to deal with condensed generator noise and condensed generator off, you know what I mean? They just moved the problem out of their immediate view and pushed it down into someone else's.
There was a support for us in the community. People have signed a petition for us. We have a lot more signatures supporting the food trucks than there were signatures for people complaining about aspects to the food trucks being present here.
We had more emails and calls on that issue in such a small amount of time than we had on the asylum seeker crisis, the unhoused crisis that we've had on affordable housing and the actual real crisis in Portland of where are people gonna live. The conversations around hotels not renewing their lease so that we would have asylum seekers that have no place to go, and that has since luckily been amended. But those are real issues that really affect a lot of Portlanders that don't even have the privilege of being able to run a business at all. And so I think that was the hardest part, was being on the receiving end of so many emails, and suddenly the public engagement is higher than it's ever been for that one issue.
Food truck issue definitely matters. I think it's hard to, in such a small city, it's hard to say the day of the protest, I was talking about, we were dealing with a huge issue that's so much bigger than the municipality of asylum seekers and GA. At the same time, we were dealing with food trucks, right? And like, they are important to different people for different reasons, but I just get really, I get frustrated, I get concerned when I see folks show up for single issues that matter just to them in that moment. And it's, yes, of course, like if this is impacting your income, if this is impacting your business, please show up. But also show up when we have, 1,300 families that we are trying to house and we have no help.
But the same way that I want us to bring lived experiences to the table, like if we're talking about under-resourced groups, if we're talking about unhoused individuals, we need to be bringing lived experience to the table. So I would hope we would do the same thing with the food truck conversation and develop a relationship with the food truck operators so that if they do have an issue, they can pick up the phone and call and say like, oh, let me give like my counselor a call, let me give the city manager a call. Because I still think the city is small enough where we can do stuff like that. Like no one is really anonymous here to the point where people shouldn't be able to like email you and find a time to meet up.
I just think that if you keep pushing trucks away from one area, they're going to go to other areas, and then they're going to want restrictions, and it's going to push them to another area. So instead of finding reasons for people not to be places, let's find a way to make more places usable. And that way it spreads everybody out. The economic impact is lower, the trash is lower, the noise is spread out, and people can go to more places around the city, which is filled with beauty, rather than just worrying about one parking lot.
I thought the solution the committee presented was just extraordinarily great idea, very progressive. It eliminated parking between Congress and Turner Street. It rerouted traffic over to the far 2 lanes, leaving 2 lanes open for food trucks and pedestrians. Development of parklets, ability to leave the truck there permanently, which I think overall would benefit everybody involved. And that's a solution that I hope gets revisited as time goes on.
Well, I think that pushing the pilot program off until next year is the right thing to do, so that the trucks can all prepare to make this huge change. If they have told us this over the winter, we would have a lot of time to prepare for these changes, but giving us guidelines a couple weeks before this thing starts, and we're having to make all these changes and potentially lose, income because of the new location. I think the right thing to do is push off the pilot program till next year and really take a lot of time to do it right. Have the city working with the food trucks to come up with a plan that works for everybody. And I think that's the solution.
I mean, the communication would be for all of us to pick a date, for them to contact all of us, not just email, via phone, and say, we're going to have a meeting, let's come up with a solution, we'll sit down, we'll spitball ideas, and we'll figure out what works best for everyone. I mean, I'm sorry if the elite up here need their view. That's not my problem. Don't buy a friggin' house for $4 million along the water next to a public park if you don't want to see food trucks.